Now to discuss the amendment of Electoral Act by the House of Representatives, allowing presidential candidates to spend as much as 10 billion naira, governorship 5 billion naira, and the new approach by INEC to factionalization in political parties. I'm now joined by Samson Itodo, his executive director at YIAGA Africa. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and compliments of the season.
Same to you. Same to you. There's so much to be excited about. Of course, Yuletide is here.
Yeah.
Great. So let's talk about, should we even start with, let's talk about the ceiling, the new ceiling for campaign funding. It's been doubled, I mean, for presidential, from 5 billion naira to 10 billion naira. For the governors, from 1 billion to 3 billion. For the Senate, from 100 million to 500 million. And for House of Reps, from 70 million to 250 million naira. Your thoughts? Why are campaigns becoming more costly? Are there wider implications for this?
Absolutely, there are wider implications. I think the first point is the fact that even what the National Assembly has done is basically reinforcing, this closure and shrinking of the political space and making public office the exclusive preserve of a few.
Right.
And that when you restrict the political space by pegging, high campaign expenditure, what you're simply doing is you're eliminating a section of your society from participating. So you shrink the space, and then you promote unfair competition. That's one. Secondly, if people have to spend as high as 10 billion, even though realistically you cannot execute a presidential election in Nigeria without spending more than 10 billion in realistic terms.
So this 10 billion is even just a conservative figure?
It is a conservative figure, but it's also very high because something is wrong with the fact that public office and running for office is determined by the highest bidder and the highest spender. That is why when people get into office, their first preoccupation is how do they recoup, the monies that they've spent. And you see also, and that's how you see dirty money filters into our politics and shapes not just political outcomes, but shapes governance after the election. And that's why you see people who secure electoral victory in elections, when they get into office, they are looking for ways, to pay back on some of the expenses, either through granting tax waivers to those who sponsored them, or awarding some form of contract. And so all you have is just a politics of patronage. And when you have this system, at the end of the day, what we get is a plutocracy and not a democracy. Right. Because in a democracy, you have to create a level playing field for all. But the current prescriptions as to campaign spending does to a large extent tilt the balance of power against those who are either economically marginalized structurally and make it difficult for them to access public office.
Now, if we allow this to stand, how do you even track it? Who should be tracking to even ensure that the politicians are not going beyond what INEC or even the Electoral Act or the Constitution has
If there's
prescribed?
one thing we have failed...
Is there any way at all of
we
tracking?
have failed, to do is to track campaign spending. In fact, even when governing and ruling political parties admit that they spent above the prescriptions in the electoral law, no one is held to ransom. In Buhari's administration, in the 2015 and the 2019 elections, they spent over 5 billion, in the presidential campaign. They admitted that this was a number. It was above the campaign spending.
And there were
limit.
no consequences.
There were no consequences. It's not just presidential. You look at governorship elections. I think that the law and how we are structuring and designing our law, it's not responding to the political reality. And it doesn't demonstrate that there's commitment on the part of the political class to create a level playing field. But you can combine the House of Reps, because quite frankly, the House of Reps has demonstrated they're really committed, to passing this electoral bill.
Yeah.
We're waiting for the Senate. The feelers that we get is that the Senate will consider its either next week, Tuesday. But if it doesn't, it means we are suspending the conclusion of this amendment process till next year. That's
because of
next month.
The window.
Because of the window. And so it becomes very tight. But also, if you look at the bill, and I think something we should celebrate as Nigerians, is that in the bill that the House passed, compulsory electronic transmission of results was introduced, in the law. And this
but will it be what the paper is written on? That's the thing.
But again, that's why we shouldn't go to sleep, because it is contained in the law. INEC needs to issue guidelines and ensure that there aren't any ambiguities, right? And shortcomings like we observed in the 2023 election. So I think that this current INEC seem to demonstrate that they've learned the lessons from 2023. And we as citizens would need to constantly put the pressure. But let's celebrate the fact that we have recorded some progress with respect to the legal framework for electronic transmission of results. We just have to be vigilant so that in the subsidiary legislations, like the guidelines, like other manuals that INEC will produce, it is not confusing. Let it be clear and let citizens know what is the whole process of electronic transmission of results.
The guest we had on yesterday talked about the difference, the Honorable actually, the difference between transferring and transmitting, that there was some ambiguity around that. And that, advised.
Even though I don't see what's the ambiguity there.
Matter of semantics.
Whether it's when you're transferring, the whole concept of transfer is that you're moving a particular document from point A to point B. It's movement from one point to another. It's the same thing with transmission. I just think that those who interpreted the law prevaricated because an opportunity was presented to them.
Wanted to leave that loophole to take advantage
I don't think there's any confusion.
Very quickly, let's come to INEC's approach to factionalization in political parties. It's called both camps of the PDP, to a meeting and said, look, there's a need for us to have clarity. What do you think about this? I mean, should INEC be engaging in this kind of intervention? Should it be a template going forward?
I think
is INEC even empowered?
The reason why INEC is dragged into this mess, it's because of the unhealthy state of our political parties. It's just disappointing that a party that has governed this country for about 16 years is unable to address its own internal issues and is dragging the arbiter into, or the umpire into its mess, and putting and shifting the blame on INEC. INEC conveyed that meeting at the instance of the fact that you had conflicting correspondences from a political party. And I followed this entire story, and I was just really miffed at the fact that if these are people who call themselves leaders, of political institutions, and they want Nigerians to trust them, and this display of impunity, disregard for your own internal rules, is just really disappointing. I think INEC is doing too much. We say INEC is overburdened. INEC has no business, trying to midwife or resolve conflict in political parties. Today, the Supreme Court...
Otherwise, INEC will be putting out so many fires in different parties.
The Supreme Court issued a ruling maintaining and upholding the decision that it has held in previous elections. That internal matters of a political party
should be left to the political party.
Why drag INEC or force INEC to activate its powers in trying to resolve the conflict? So I think that it behoves on the parties. I don't think INEC should be dragged, into this mess.
Does it matter that Professor Abunkwiton pointed out that INEC is a neutral party here?
Yes.
So let it not look like we're trying to favor.
Because if you were the chair of the commission, what would you have done? Today you receive a correspondence from PDP. Tomorrow you receive another conflicting correspondence. As an institution, INEC is governed by rules and the law. It has to enforce the law. But in doing so, when you have those conflicts, you also have conflicting court judgments.
There you go.
Right? You have orders coming from courts of coordinate jurisdiction. And then the commission is confused as to which judgment should it comply with. Therefore,
or which camp it should be dealing with.
This matter needs to be resolved. Yes, they have to wait for the superior courts, in this case the Court of Appeal, to determine this. But I think beyond that, what I see from your images, it doesn't appear to me that the two factions within the PDP are going to reach a truce, because it is clear that they are either
Where does that leave INEC?
Well, it leaves INEC would have to wait for the courts.
Okay.
It's what the court decides.
And follow what the court decides.
And then adopt what, because if the court resolves that a particular faction is recognized as the legal body or entity, INEC will have no choice but to follow the court judgment.
Okay. Thank you so much, Samson Itodo, Executive Director, YIAGA Africa, for
Always a
joining
delight,
us.
and compliments of the season as well.
Again, thank you very much.